Today, we'll rank the world's elite inside the octagon, including the best fighters representing all major fighting countries. Then dig into the why behind the success. First, let's look at the numbers. But be careful. The numbers really only tell part of the story. We'll get into that. How you rank countries in MMA depends on your metric. Measured across most counts, the US leads, Brazil is a clear number 2, and Russia is the fast riser. But the exact order can wobble depending on definitions: undisputed belts, interim titles, tournament-era winners, or lineal reigns. Count everything, and the US distance widens. Strip out interims and focus on undisputed reigns, and Brazil closes the gap. Include 1990s tournament winners, and the US spikes again. Some sources even lump Canada into North America, inflating the US total. That methodological noise is why one outlet will proclaim a huge American lead while another narrows the margin. Concrete-ish numbers illustrate the scale. A commonly cited compilation that tallies tournament, lineal, and interim reigns credits the US with roughly 68 champions. Brazil typically sits in the low 20s. Russia often shows 4 to 5, rising if you add champions from other top promotions and interim holders. The debate persists, but the pattern is clear. US far ahead, Brazil established runner-up, Russia ascending. Era clusters tell the rest of the story. Brazil produced sustained dynasties: Anderson Silva's middleweight run, Jose Aldo's featherweight reign, Amanda Nunes dominating 2 divisions, periods when Brazil felt like MMA's center of gravity. Russia's recent surge centers on lightweight dominance. Khabib Nurmagomedov set a suffocating standard that Islam Makhachev has extended, shifting perception and narrowing the leaderboard when viewed through the last decade. Beyond headline titles, system-level factors explain the US lead. ESPN's MMA World Power Index and similar measures don't just count belts. They weigh current champions, ranked depth, prospect pipelines, and presence across major promotions. The US often grades high even if it has fewer active champions at a snapshot, because the domestic pipeline is deep. More top 15 fighters, more late replacements who are already fight-sharp, and more chances to turn a contender bout into a title shot. Broadcast reach compounds the advantage. The UFC airs in over 165 countries, staging 40-plus live events a year, many in the US, including frequent cards at the UFC Apex. That volume reduces visa headaches, travel time, and medical turnaround for American fighters. When matchmakers need a short-notice fill, proximity and readiness translate into real opportunity. Replacement slots become breakthrough wins, and then title shots. So when leaderboards show the US out front, it's not only about raw titles, it's about an ecosystem that feeds athletes into pivotal moments. Dense domestic competition, robust broadcast exposure, infrastructural support, and sponsor markets all create frictionless pathways to high-leverage fights. Brazil's historic brilliance and Russia's recent targeted surge are both undeniable, but the American system's scale and proximity to opportunity keep it top of most lists, until and unless other countries replicate that infrastructure. Broadcast reach adds another layer. UFC programming airs in more than 165 countries and territories, and the promotion produces over 40 live events annually. A significant share of those cards are staged in the US, including many at the UFC Apex. The volume alone creates advantages: fewer visa hurdles, shorter travel, and quicker medical turnarounds for US-based athletes. When matchmakers need short-notice fill-ins, proximity and readiness translate into opportunities. So when you see a leaderboard showing the US out front, it's influenced by a system that feeds more athletes into key moments. A domestic circuit and dense schedule creates replacement slots that become breakthrough wins, all of which impact the scoreboard. Let's talk about the engine that fuels US elite MMA. The wrestling to UFC conveyor belt that runs from youth mats to college arenas and then to the cage. Scholastic and collegiate wrestling in the US operate like a national farm system. Kids accumulate hundreds of live matches before they can drive. weekly competition through youth and high school seasons, then dual meets, conference tournaments, and nationals in college. Outcomes are measurable. Rankings, match stats, win-loss records, and seeding pressure create continuous feedback and force athletes to address weaknesses. By the time a top wrestler shifts to MMA, they've built years of timing on shots, stand-ups, and ride-outs, a database of reps that's difficult to reproduce later. Contrast that with countries lacking broad school-based wrestling. Many athletes begin grappling in clubs with fewer competitions, less mat time, and sporadic seasons. Skill comes later and under fewer live-fire reps. When rounds compress into 5 minutes and the cage removes escape routes, early exposure to grindy positions matters. It shapes instincts for hand fighting, level changes, and pressure in ways that don't burn out the athlete. You can see the effect in champions. Daniel Cormier's Olympic base translated to body lock finishes and suffocating top pressure. Kamaru Usman used collegiate chain wrestling to pin opponents to the fence and methodically win rounds. Henry Cejudo's freestyle gold brought rapid entries and mat awareness that neutralized scrambles. The common thread isn't merely takedowns, it's control after impact. U.S. wrestling education emphasizes control as a scoring condition. Athletes learn grip riding, keeping wrists, elbows, and hips tied up, mat returns that keep opponents on the floor, and pressure techniques that turn scrambles into deliberate positional advantages. Against the fence, these habits show as shoulder pressure, wrist rides, and inside trips that reset position. Top pressure becomes a weapon. Instead of chaotic scrambles, it becomes a slow squeeze that drains opponents and tilts close rounds. There's also timeline efficiency. Wrestlers arrive with superior cardio, pace control, and weight cut discipline because they've endured hostile gyms, long road trips, and elimination brackets. Repetition builds composure, so when a round goes messy, they default to positions they've visited thousands of times. Statistically, fighters with wrestling backgrounds post higher takedown success and longer control time in high-stakes bouts, decisive in title fights where one takedown and a couple minutes of riding can swing the score. Where do hands, submissions, and fight IQ come in? They're layered onto the control engine, learning to strike safely into entries, pass guard under punches, and manage risk when the crowd and clock apply pressure. Folk-style wrestling's focus on holding people down translates directly to winning fence exchanges, converting failed shots into body locks, and staying heavy from the top until the horn. The final step is converting that raw control into championship craft, rooms that refine wrestling foundations into complete, belt-winning fighters. Next comes where that wrestling base meets structure, super gyms and systems built to turn experience into outcomes. Why do some gyms reliably produce champions? It's not mystique so much as machinery. Top U.S. teams stack compounding advantages across a camp: deep training rooms, on-site specialists, integrated coaching, and direct access to science-backed support. Start with the network. American Top Team packs wrestlers, Muay Thai specialists, BJJ world champions, and diverse strikers under one roof. American Kickboxing Academy codified a wrestling-to-striking blueprint suited to pressure games and clean entries, the approach honed during Khabib's U.S. camps and visible in Islam Makhachev's runs. Jackson Wink, Extreme Couture, and City Kickboxing add their own lanes, cage wrestling systems, clinch work, 5-round strategies, and City Kickboxing's close U.S. ties enable regular stateside camps and cross-pollination. Overlaying it all is Las Vegas. The UFC Performance Institute sits a short drive from multiple super gyms, acting as a performance hub. The singular coach myth is convenient but misleading. The reality is an integrated lab. Head coaches coordinate with wrestling leads, striking specialists, BJJ coaches, S&C staff, and rehab pros in constant dialogue. At ATT, a cross-style roster lets a fighter spar a pressure wrestler on Monday, a rangy kickboxer Wednesday, and a switch stance southpaw Friday, while staff monitor output and recovery. At AKA, camps layer takedown chains with safe exit patterns and post-shot defense, so wrestlers who finish on the hips also learn to avoid elbows on the break. The UFC PI complements gyms as a resource hub. Fighters and coaches use tailored nutrition plans, hydration and weight cut protocols, biomechanical assessments, and post-injury roadmaps. Those evaluations spotlight asymmetries, stance width, hip rotation, strike mechanics, so teams can tweak drills before small imbalances become layoffs. Recovery protocols, soft tissue work, cold exposure, sleep strategies, cut overtraining risk. Private gyms handle tactics and sparring. The PI backs them with health and performance science. Sparring quality is another decisive edge. High-level partners show up daily. Veterans host camp visitors from Brazil, Russia, Oceania, and Europe. Prospects routinely eat rounds with former champions, top 5 contenders, and Olympic grapplers. When sparring partners can replicate a title opponent's stance, range, and habits, preparation becomes deterministic instead of speculative. Economic and logistical factors matter too. Sponsorships and brand deals create predictable income, letting fighters commit to full camps, cover travel, and avoid side jobs. That stability buys recovery windows and genuine rest days. Short flights to Vegas or Florida for specialist sessions streamline logistics. Brazil and Russia have elite rooms, Nova União, shoot box lineages, Dagestani hubs, but the U.S. conversion rate stays higher because its infrastructure layers are dense and proximate. Less friction, more quality. All of that is preparation. The final variable is opportunity. Who gets the late call, clears the paperwork, makes weight, and turns a polished camp into a contract when the phone rings on a Tuesday. The U.S. feeder leagues make that leap possible on short notice, and the U.S. has them running year-round. This is the domestic launchpad. Cards every weekend, eyes on every region, and athletes who stay in fighting shape. This is how American prospects go from a local poster to a UFC walkout in a few weeks, and actually pull off the win. The U.S. regional scene isn't one pipeline, it's many, all headed in the same destination. Dana White's Contender Series gives matchmakers live auditions. The Ultimate Fighter functions as a pressure lab where cameras simulate the big show. Then you have the backbone promotions, LFA, Cage Fury, Fury FC, booking steady slates with ranked prospects and repeat matchups. These events aren't just showcases. They're checkpoints that tell matchmakers who is ready for a late replacement, who is tracking for a contender slot, and who needs another camp. The friction gap shows up when a call-up is urgent. International talent often waits on visas, travel approvals, and new medicals. By contrast, a U.S.-based prospect can drive to weigh-ins, pass commission checks, and make the ring walk on 2 days' notice. It's not that overseas athletes lack skill. Logistics simply favors fighters who can get to the venue with a mouthguard and a recent blood panel. From there, a quick submission, devastating knockout, or close-fought war can result in a callback within a month. Event volume is also a multiplier. More shows mean more opportunities. Commissions and medical standards streamline the quick turn. States with mature oversight require MRI, ophthalmology checks, and blood work on routine cycles. If a fighter competed last month, most of those boxes are already ticked. That means the only variable left is weight and a game plan, not paperwork. Promoters can shuffle matchups across nearby states with similar rule sets, so a scratched co-main in Texas becomes a new booking in Nevada with the same opponent a week later. Contender Series graduates also hold up well once they're in. A wave of them score early finishes or decision wins against roster vets, then stick around through multiple contracts. They arrive used to the small cage, bright lights, and one-shot stakes. All of this builds skill and exposure quickly, but it also shapes how fighters handle stress when the lights jump a few lumens brighter. Reps under commission rules, quick turnarounds, and televised trials teach pacing and problem-solving in real time. That's where the late rounds start to feel familiar, and calm becomes a skill you can measure. Let's shift from opportunities to outcomes when the clock stretches to 25 minutes. Title fight composure, culture, psychology, and the 5th round. Why do American fighters look so calm in the 4th and 5th when everything's on fire? It traces back to how they grow up competing. The pace and pressure feel familiar. They've spent years in packed gyms and loud arenas where a single mistake decides a match. By the time they reach a UFC main event, the chaos feels like another Saturday with brighter lights. High school and college dual meets teach urgency on a clock and composure with a referee in your ear. The NCAA season layers weekly weigh-ins, hostile road crowds, and elimination brackets where one loss ends the run. Add in boxing shows, national tournaments, and televised finals, and you get athletes who treat cameras and noise as normal, all of which builds a mental routine. When the 4th round starts, they already know how to reset their breath, answer a corner cue, and steal momentum with a single sequence. Plenty of countries grow elite talent. The difference shows up in temperament under studio lights. Some systems produce brilliant technicians, but fewer athletes who've repeated high-stakes events in front of big audiences since their teens. You can see it in 5-round specialists coming out of US-based camps that emphasize pace control and steady surges. They don't chase knockouts in the 3rd. They bank jabs, clinch breaks, fence rides, and clean exits. The accumulation sets up the late push. It's not flash. It's a plan that counts small wins and keeps the heart rate stable enough to finish strong. Sports science also tightens those margins with prescriptive nutrition, recovery, and biomechanics assessments. Also, folk-style habits fit right into energy management. Ride time and mat returns teach you to control without burning gas. Techniques and strategies against the fence and on the mat save lungs in the 4th and 5th. Instead of emptying the tank in scrambles, they prioritize scoring by winning positions that judges notice and opponents hate. The methodology is simple. Limit spikes, avoid redline bursts, and stack control moments the opponent can't reverse. When they do choose to push, it's calculated and supported by the numbers they've trained to. None of this means other nations lack mental toughness. Dagestani rooms, Brazilian camps, and European boxing circuits forge resilient athletes. The distinction is scale and consistency, which the American system can deliver far more often. The next layer is the infrastructure that funds and protects it, where sponsorships, insurance, and medical support all come heavily into play. Zoom in on the tools that keep athletes training, healing, and visible between fights. Money, medicine, and media. The hidden multipliers that turn a good camp into a sustained career. Sponsorships and insurance shape performance more than you'd expect. If a camp budget covers specialists, weight cuts run cleaner, recovery stays on track, and a fighter can sprawl hard in the 4th round. Financial scaffolding becomes physical outcomes, and in the US, that scaffolding is easier to build. Here's the framework. Major American broadcasts and streaming, most notably the UFC's partnership with ESPN, raise visibility and marketability for US-based fighters, creating steadier sponsor income and predictable opportunities between fights. The UFC Performance Institute supplements that with practical services, tailored nutrition and hydration protocols for weight cuts, biomechanics testing, and recovery programming. Insurance or institutional support cushions the blow when camps go sideways. Together, these pieces create a stable training calendar where athletes don't have to pause to patch finances after every bout. Abroad, the picture often looks different. Many international fighters juggle training with day jobs, long travel runs, and out-of-pocket rehab. Miss a fight, and the income gap can stretch for months. Delayed rehab turns small issues into chronic problems. Jet lag and travel blunt early weeks of camp. That doesn't mean lesser talent, just a higher cost to arrive in peak shape. Practical examples show the margin. PI diagnostics flag asymmetries in force output or joint loading so teams can tweak stance or mechanics before a tiny imbalance becomes a missed year. Dietitians map weight cut timelines and rehydration plans that prevent last-minute crashes. Physical therapists schedule deloads and targeted prehab so athletes peak on fight week, not 2 weeks early. Those adjustments add months of healthy training annually and lower injury risk during high-intensity sparring. Rules and gear deals tightened stability too. The standardized fight kit era, kicked off by the outfitting policy in 2015, corralled sponsorship dollars into a predictable lane managers could plan around. When income is less random, fighters can commit to longer camps, buy specialist sessions, and give nagging injuries time to heal. The difference between a clean camp and a patched one. Media reach compounds the effect. Bigger platforms mean more eyeballs, which translate into local appearances, regional sponsors, and social media leverage, currency for negotiations and brand deals. With baseline income and exposure, fighters can focus on refining game plans rather than hustling for the next payday. The result? When money and medicine line up, output follows. Consistent income and health coverage correlate with higher fight frequency, fewer layoffs, and finer camp quality. Nutrition, altitude blocks, and specialist coaches move from wish list to budget line. The final product is a steadier, sharper fighter who makes the walk more often and arrives with fewer red flags. The U.S. machine isn't unique forever. The UFC PI in Shanghai signals investment abroad. But for now, those multipliers set the stage. Next, match the names to the engines that powered them. Let's put faces to flags and tie each to the system that forged them, the Mount Rushmore of UFC fighters by country, and what built them. United States, John Jones and Demetrius Johnson epitomize the American model of breadth and repeatability. Jones' longevity and skill evolution came from constant access to elite camps, diverse sparring, and a domestic scene that supplies high-level opponents year-round. Demetrius represents the precision lane, pacing, transitions, and footwork honed under coaches who could assemble wrestling, striking, and clinch specialists in one program. The U.S. engine is simple and massive. Youth wrestling, deep super gyms, science support, and a dense event calendar that continually tests and refines fighters. Brazil. Anderson Silva and Amanda Nunes trace lineage to BJJ culture and gritty regional circuits. Silva's timing and counter game were sharpened alongside world-class grapplers and Muay Thai stylist partners, then polished in full camps that layered tactics and defense. Nunes fused pressure boxing, mat control, and smart camp sequencing to maximize peak years. Brazil's base is technical grappling culture reinforced now by modern strength and conditioning and better international travel, tightening preparation windows and opponent-specific work. Russia, Dagestan. Khabib Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev are product and proof of a sambo and wrestling cradle that prizes grip fighting, chain rides, and positional dominance. Their control-first templates, inside trips, wrist ties, relentless pressure, come from North Caucasus mat rooms where transitions are drilled into instinct. U.S. camps often add striking exits and 5-round pacing, but the spine is regional wrestling culture that erases scrambles before they start. England. Michael Bisping and Leon Edwards showcase steady infrastructural growth. Bisping's career leaned on volume striking, cardio, and surviving a rotating gallery of elite foes. Edwards blends southpaw timing with clinchcraft and fence savvy, learned against a steady stream of wrestlers. England's system is maturing coaching, more sparring diversity, and regular access to U.S.-level camps that let fighters sharpen specific matchup tools. Australia, New Zealand. Alexander Volkanovski and Israel Adesanya are city kickboxing products, the Oceania blueprint. These rooms prioritize feints, stance switches, and long-round game plans. Volkanovski layers relentless pace, clinch resets, and cage IQ. Adesanya is range control and counter fluency. Oceania's strength is tight teams, strategic travel blocks for elite camps, and repeated exposure to U.S. and European styles to refine timing. China. Zhang Weili is the face of an emerging structured model. The Shanghai Performance Institute and similar hubs deliver strength programming, nutrition, and staged skill progression. Zhang blends explosive entries, improving defensive wrestling, and disciplined camp plans with targeted international cross-training. The model is designed to scale as more prospects cycle through institutional resources. These picks spark the usual debates: legacy length versus peak dominance, interim belts, per capita metrics, but the through line is consistent. Heritage plus modern support equals sustained greatness. Drug testing, safer weight cuts, and data-driven recovery have extended primes, favoring fighters and nations that adopt those tools. Notice another recurring pattern. Many international elites bridge home systems with U.S. refinement. A Sambo ace plugs into AKA's structure, a BJJ star adds takedown defense in Florida, Oceania strikers eat rounds with American wrestlers before title shots. Influence meets access, converting regional dominance into championship form. Greatness clusters where tradition meets infrastructure. The U.S. currently wins on scale and repeatability, but the blueprint is visible elsewhere. The next main event will show those systems in action. Fence battles, pace control, and the last 10 minutes where margins thin and preparation becomes destiny. In summary, the U.S. doesn't just have more athletes, it runs a factory that refines them from wrestling rooms to super gyms to PI labs, with data, recovery, and event access turning potential into belts. Fighters are part of a non-stop machine designed to find, train, mold, and produce the world's elite. It's the engine behind the statistics. But those systems aren't exclusive anymore. Other countries are adopting similar structures: regional circuits, integrated camps, and science-backed support, which is why the gap can tighten. So, what do you think? Is the best fighting country in the world a product of volume and system? Or should we place more weight on the impact of the greatest champions relative to the volume and resources available to them? Let us know your take. If you like what you saw, hit us with a like and subscribe, and join us as we unpack more across the world of the UFC.